Hey, welcome everybody. It's a new year. We have some great new presentations, and today is one of those. Our presenter, Jessica Weizenbluth, she is a unique attorney in the sense that she practices healthcare law. And I talked to her about that. And it was kind of interesting. In fact, she, of course, doesn't operate on patients. She represents the entities that actually do the healthcare. And she has a passion for health and wellness, and she's studied meditation and digestion and yoga in a number of foreign countries, including India, Thailand, and Guatemala. And she's a certified yoga teacher in Los Angeles. And at each of her workplaces, she's kept finding herself implementing wellness activities or being asked for wellness advice. So when COVID hit, she decided to take her passion for health to the next level, and she became a certified health coach. She uses her unique experience as both a lawyer and a health coach to help other lawyers manage their stress and improve their digestion in a very practical, reliable way. So she seeks to help other attorneys struggling with stress and dietary issues to achieve the same zest for life that she feels today. So welcome, Jessica, and thanks for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gary. Yeah, thank you. So I'm just gonna share the screen here. Can everybody see? Oh, wait, let's see. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Great. So I'm realizing actually when I share the screen, I can't really see any comments. So we'll leave all the questions until the end. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to do the presentation for you. I'm Jessica Weizenbluth. Just a little disclaimer, we're all lawyers here before we get started, that I'm not a healthcare professional, and obviously you should consult your physician and anybody else on your healthcare team before making any lifestyle changes, changing your diet, your exercise. And this is all, educational information, and it's very generalized, and you should always seek out somebody to help you with your individualized needs. So now that we have that over with, we can get started. So Gary did a pretty great introduction. I have my own law practice, and I practice in healthcare law, and that means a variety of different things. I help, general healthcare transactions, business contracts, worked on some telemedicine ventures, managed care, and then I also do some less traditional, more health, like wellness side businesses, helping health coaches, helping people with other wellness businesses, and just doing all sorts of contract and commercial work. I don't do any litigation. So I've been really lucky to have the opportunity to study in a variety of different places, different areas of yoga and meditation and wellness. And just last year, I decided to take it further and get my coaching certificate from the Institute for Integrated Nutrition. And since then, I've been able to coach a number of clients and just really learn a lot about, what people are struggling with. But, why did I get into wellness? Well, as you can see in these photos, which aren't nice to look at and were even worse to experience, I went through a really difficult time when I was 22, and I broke out with acne for the first time. And, to some, I think people don't think it's a big deal. It's not a life-threatening illness, but it can feel really terrible, especially as a young woman. I was really insecure, and mostly I didn't understand why it happened and how to fix it. And after months and months, it just wouldn't go away. I tried every cream, every cleanser, every ointment. I was told to go on antibiotics. But, the catch was the second I got off, it was going to come back. I even tried snake oil remedies. People were just recommending all sorts of things, and I just would try anything. And nothing worked. And I was really at my wit's end, and I was getting ready to try Accutane. But I really didn't want to, because it's a medication for acne, very effective, but it can be very hard on your liver. But I wasn't sure what to do, because I thought, I don't know what to do. And a friend of mine recommended I go see a naturopath, and I thought, well, what does that have to do with my skin? But I was honestly so desperate that I was just willing to give anything a try. And I went to this naturopath, and she literally changed my life. She sat down with me. We did a food sensitivity test. And, by the way, it's not like I was eating really unhealthy, but she helped me identify foods that were causing my lifestyle with me and causing stress. She really just took the time to sit with me. And with her help, I made dietary changes and lifestyle changes, and I completely was able to heal my skin. And this was really the first time I understood that what you put into your body and how you live your life has a direct impact on what is happening inside of you. And that can manifest on your skin, and that can manifest in all sorts of ways. And that's really where my passion for wellness truly began and continued. So I'm here today because I know firsthand what it feels like to be stressed. I had severe anxiety when I was going through law school, and I suffered from anxiety attacks. I know, my colleagues would come to me, as Gary mentioned, when I was working. They were also telling me about how stressed they felt, not necessarily having coping mechanisms in place to deal with that stress. And as a coach, it was primarily other attorneys who were seeking me out and coming to me. And I noticed that they were all suffering from the same thing. And that was stress, that was digestive issues, and a lot of those things were stemming from perfectionism. And so I've really seen that these are really important areas for attorneys, and I'm passionate about trying to help them so that we can improve the health and wellness in our profession. So let's get into it. So what are common stressors for attorneys? I mean, I think you all already know, right? Billable hours, work relationships, client relationships, student loans, not enough leisure time, taking care of family. And even though those things are the stressor themselves, they're really related to kind of these bigger categories, right? Like our community, career, finances, security. Like these are all things that we just all want for ourselves, that we want it to be the best. And when we feel like something is out of whack in one of these areas, it can cause us stress. And unfortunately, there's no course in law school about how to deal with this stress, right? In law school, I went to a very good law school in Canada, and the general mentality was work hard, play hard. We would study really hard, and then there would be a lot of partying. And there wasn't really any advice about how to transition into the workplace. And I've seen many colleagues, suffer from alcoholism or drug abuse. And it was something that developed, later on, like once they were working. And just seeing these different coping mechanisms, people trying to cope with these feelings, but doing it in a way that's not really helping them. So with alcohol, junk food, feel like you don't have enough time. You just want to order a burger because it's fast, binging on TV, scrolling your phone, just like ignoring the stressor and putting it off. And so why are these not good coping mechanisms? Well, some of them can actually cause you to even be more stressed, things like alcohol or sugar. They actually, even though they feel good in that moment, they actually can cause more anxiety and stress in the aftermath. They can be addictive. A lot of them are mindless activities. So you're kind of ignoring the stress, which means that it's still there and you're not necessarily doing something to be proactive, which means that there's no change. So you continue to feel the stress. And, they're just generally, some of them are just unhealthy activities. So how does stress impact your body? This is obviously a very general diagram, but it gives you a good idea of what's going on. So let's say you have a stressor. Let's just say, your boss yelled at you, and you're feeling really stressed. You don't have a coping mechanism in place for it, so you keep thinking about it and you keep stressing. Your body releases stress hormones. So it releases cortisol, it releases adrenaline, and it also releases something called pro-inflammatory cytokines. And that's a chemical in your body. And, that's okay, right? Like everything our body does is to try to help us. But the problem is that your body is thinking that it's under an attack, and it acts in the same way it would if it was under an attack. So it becomes inflamed. And that can be okay temporarily. Usually what happens, let's say you have an injury, your body becomes inflamed, all of your resources in your body are going to try and heal it, and then eventually it comes down and goes back to normal. But the problem happens when you keep feeling these stressors and your body keeps going through these cycles. And that can lead to a chronic state of inflammation where instead of your body completely healing and coming down, it just stays in that inflammatory place. And that makes it difficult for your body to function. It starts to affect the functioning of your body, and that's where problems can occur. But even in that short-term stress, I'll know once you really come down, you feel really exhausted because you've just put your body through a lot. And that can make it difficult to get something done. And what can end up happening is if you've been so stressed and then you feel so exhausted, there's things that you're not able to do, and then that can just lead to more stress. And so stress has an effect really on all parts of your body, but a big part that it has an effect on is your gut and your stomach. And so if you haven't heard already, the gut is referred to often as the second brain because it is so connected to your brain and your mind and what's happening. So let's take that same stressor. What's happening in your gut when that's happening? Well, again, you're going to get that inflammation, and the release of those hormones, the cortisol, that actually can slow down your metabolism. And then that makes it harder for you to digest your food. It can lead to bloating, gas, indigestion. What can also happen is over time, the bacteria in your gut can actually change. So we have tons of bacteria in our gut, and we want that, right? And we want to have kind of like a rainforest of bacteria in our gut of all sorts of different varieties, and that helps us have a healthy digestion. But what happens is if you continually feel stressed, over time, that bacteria can change, and rather than having a big variety, you can start to have an overgrowth in certain bacteria and having other good bacteria that's not growing anymore. And then that can actually change the way you feel. It can lead to anxiety, depression, because it is so connected to your brain. So over time, obviously, it can have all sorts of effects on you. It's been a contributing cause to a number of immune conditions. It can lead to high blood pressure, heart problems, thyroid problems, acid reflux, chronic bloating or gas, and also just, having deep-seated bad habits that are difficult to break. So ideally, what we want is that when that stressor occurs, we want to have some sort of healthy coping mechanism in place so that we can break this cycle, so that we know when this happens, we have this thing that we can do, and that it will help us calm down so that we're not stuck in this stress cycle. So what does this have to do with your New Year's resolution? Well, usually on New Year's Eve, what are we doing when we're making resolutions? We're essentially acknowledging that we have these bad habits in place, and we're trying to create better ones. We know that we have these stresses in our life, and we know that maybe we're not always handling them properly. And so we say we're going to lose weight, or we're going to stop drinking, or we're going to be more organized. Well, what all of those really are is that we're trying to change our coping mechanisms, and we're trying to implement better habits. But, what happens is, maybe you're able to do it for a few weeks. And then ultimately, for a lot of people, they make a mistake or they slowly fall back, and suddenly they're just back in their same habits, and they're right where they left off. So why can't you keep these resolutions? Why is it so hard? Well, the fact that you want to make those changes is a really, really great start. But you have to actually do more to create that change. So first, you have to believe that it's possible, okay? Then you have to create realistic, sustainable goals for yourself. And then you have to be willing to make the changes that you need to be making in your life to fit these new goals and these new changes that you want to make, right? So, if you feel like you don't have any time to exercise, the time isn't going to magically appear just because you've decided now you'd like to exercise. You have to make certain shifts and adjustments in your life to make room for that, right? So in order to start making those changes and to achieve your goals, you really need to change the story underneath it. So what does that mean? I'm going to give you an example. So I used to tell everybody that I'm not a morning person. I wanted to be a morning person, and I would tell everyone, oh, I wish I could be one of those people who just worked out in the morning, but I'm just not a morning person. I kept telling myself this story, and I kept telling everybody else this story. but my goal didn't make sense with the story because my goal was that I wanted to wake up early and I wanted to work out. The thing is, that was not going to happen as long as I kept believing that I'm not a morning person, right? And so when we make these goals, we have to be aware of the underlying stories that we have, because we will not be able to keep those changes unless we address those stories. So I've given you some other examples. I have no time to exercise. I do everything at the last minute, but I work product and be a better lawyer, right? So you can see that the goals and the stories don't really add up. So how do you know what kind of story needs to change, right? Because we all have stories about ourselves, and we have good ones and we have not great ones. And it doesn't mean that you need to be changing everything about yourself. So the key is to really look at where your desire is, right? Like in that example that I gave to you, I wanted to wake up early. I wanted to work out in the morning. So that tells me that I have to evaluate that story because my story wasn't matching where I wanted to be. But, you know, I don't love country music. Does that mean I have to work on changing that? No, it doesn't. I don't have a desire to like it, and that's fine. So in this evaluation for yourself, looking at what stories are holding you back, you really need to think about where your desires are. And if your desire is not in the same place as your story, that's when you have to evaluate, okay, what are the stories that I'm telling myself about myself that aren't lining up? So I'd like you to open documents on your computer, or if you have a piece of paper close by. And I want you to take a few minutes to write down a few of the goals that you have for this year. And then evaluate for yourself, what are some of the stories that you've been telling yourself that might be getting in the way of these goals? And I'm just going to give you a few minutes here. And don't get too in your head about it, you know, just write whatever comes. It can be a small one or a big one. Okay, I'm going to keep going, but please continue to, you know, write if you're still working on it, okay? But I want you to be keeping these in mind. So you have your goal. You're starting to identify what these stories are about yourself. How do you actually start to change that story, right? The key is to take action. There's no way around it, right? You can intellectualize your story all you want. You can intellectualize your goals all you want, but at some point, you need to take action. But how do you do that, right? Because, you know, you think about a marathon runner, we don't ask him to run the marathon the very first day he's training, right? He has to build up to it. So I want to introduce to you a concept called the power promise. And, you know, I think there's all sorts of terms for it. Some people call it habit stacking, I think. I like the term power promise. I think it's really memorable, and it's how I learned this concept. And so the concept of the power promise is a system to help you implement change over time. And the way it works is that you start with a small commitment, one that you know you can absolutely accomplish. So, you know, as an example, let's say it's drinking 1 glass of water every day. It could even be as simple as brushing your teeth every day, okay? The idea is that you know 100% that you're capable of committing to this and of accomplishing it for a week. And so you make that promise and you do it for the week. And now you're able to look back, you're like, okay, I did this. And now you create a new promise for yourself. And that new promise for yourself builds on top of the first one. So it's slightly more challenging. So let's say in this example, maybe it's drinking 2 glasses of water every day. And what this system does as you're building is that you start to build integrity with yourself, and you start to build confidence that you're actually able to do the things that you say you're going to do. And that's a big challenge for a lot of us, because think about it. If you commit to a friend that you're going to go to a workout class together, right? You're probably likely to go. But for whatever reason, if you don't have the friend keeping you accountable and you just commit to yourself, I'm going to go to the workout class, you're much more likely to, wake up in the morning and you're tired and you're like, I'm just going to sleep in. I'll do it another time, right? And so what this does is it really helps you build integrity to yourself and confidence in yourself and show up for yourself. And it helps you do it over time. So why is this system so important? I'll get back to that in a second. Because lawyers tend to be perfectionists, right? And with good reason. It's what we're trained to do in law school and offer in our practice. There can be really big consequences if we get something wrong. And I think we've all also just experienced what it's like to submit a memo that we think is so good, and then there was a typo or an extra period, and all you hear is about the typo and the extra period, and you don't hear about the rest of it, right? And over time, that really instills in us that it has to be perfect or it's worthless. And I've seen this in clients translate into their health goals and into their stress management, because what ends up happening is that they don't believe in small change because they think it's not worth anything, right? They create unrealistic goals for themselves. I had a client who hadn't worked out in 4 months, and we were sitting down and we were evaluating what his goals were. And he said right off the bat, he wanted to start working out 7 days a week. Well, I don't even work out 7 days a week, right? It's just, he was setting himself up for this failure because the chances of him being able to accomplish that run right away were slim. But what perfectionism does is it tells you it has to be all or nothing, right? It has to be the 60-minute workout class or I'm not working out, and it can also be, excuse me 1 second. I think a lot of people have experienced this. You eat the cookie, you felt like you were having a healthy day. And once you eat the cookie, you're like, well, there goes the day. I may as well just eat junk food for the rest of the day. And I don't think people realize that that's actually stemming from perfectionism, but it is. And so we have to be willing to make small changes. We have to be willing to create realistic goals. We have to be willing to see the small changes as a win, right? Like if you got to work out for 5 minutes and you've not been working out at all, that's a win. And we have to be willing to mess up and try again, eat the cookie and move on, right? And so what this power promise concept does is that it really helps you make these small changes and helps you see them as a win. So these are a few things that I've been able to accomplish using this method. So I mentioned the first one, which is waking up early and working out. That was something I couldn't do before. Another thing I was able to do was to stop drinking coffee every day. And again, it's not because coffee is bad. It's because that was something that was stressing me out that I wanted to change. And same with alcohol. And I obviously want to be very clear that this is not a case of addiction. That's obviously very different. But it was for me, I was maybe having a glass or two of wine at dinner and I was waking up in the morning not feeling good. And I didn't like that, and I didn't just try to resolve any of these overnight. And so I just really, really want to instill that these small changes are a really powerful tool. So now that we've talked about that, I want you to go back to that page where you wrote down your goals and you wrote down your stories. And I want you to create 3 power promises that you can start with for yourself. So I've given an example. So let's say your goal is to exercise 3 times a week. Maybe your first promise would be to go on a 5-minute walk 3 times a week. And then your second promise could be going on a 10-minute walk 3 times a week. And then your third promise could be going on a 10-minute walk 3 times a week, plus attending an exercise class. So just take a few minutes and draft that out for yourself. And just remember that the idea is to start, really, really slow here, right? You don't want to jump the gun. You want to slowly build it. Okay, well, I'm going to give you some time. Again, please don't rush, but I'm going to move forward. So let's back to this stress cycle, right? And this healthy coping solution. How does this all tie in? Well, what you've done by taking action, by writing down your goals, by setting up these promises, is you have now created certain healthy coping mechanisms for your stress. Because a lot of the time, what is causing us stress is the feeling of powerlessness. the feeling like nothing is changing, right? And when you are taking these types of actions, you are taking actions towards your goals. You are figuring out what your healthy coping solutions look like. And you may actually even be reducing your stressors, right? If you have been stressing about how you keep telling yourself you're going to work out and then you don't do it, and then you finally start taking action towards it, you're going to stop stressing about it because you know that you're doing something about it. You know that you are taking action, right? So really time in the year when you are feeling like you're wanting to make changes, this is a really effective way to go about it and will naturally start to reduce your stress. So what are a few tactical solutions in the meantime that you can use to manage your stress? There's a number that are effective, and I also just really want to emphasize that really be authentic to yourself. I think so many people have a tendency to do something because their friend told them to, or because they saw it on Instagram, or because they heard a doctor talking about it, right? But you really have to do trial and error and see what works for you. So these are a few things that I'm going to share because they really work for me. So the first one is journaling or writing out what's causing me stress. So sometimes if I'm in bed at night and I'm finding that I'm thinking about all of these things and I'm tossing and I'm turning and I can't fall asleep, I will get out of bed and I will open my planner because I'm old school and I still use an actual real planner. And I'll just write it all out in a to-do list and I'll just get it out of my system. And it works every time. And then I'm able to just go back to bed and I feel a lot better. Another method is just free-form journaling. There's a really wonderful book called This Way, and the author talks about the concept of morning pages, where you wake up in the morning and you just essentially scribble out everything that's going on form without thinking about it. And the concept is that you're essentially clearing the cobwebs out of your head, right? You're just getting it all out on the piece of paper so you can get out of your head, you give it to the paper and you leave it there. And then, of course, there are all sorts of other types of journaling exercises and questions and prompts you can do, but that's a really effective tool. Another one, which I'm sure you've already heard about, is meditation and mindfulness. And again, this can look different for everybody. And we're so lucky that now we have so many different apps that we can use. There's music you can listen to. There's guided meditations you can listen to. It doesn't just have to be you sitting alone in silence, right? And meditation and mindfulness can also look like going on a hike in nature. Really what the activity or the thing is that helps you be in the present moment, that helps you start to think about what's happening in your brain and really being aware of what is going on, because that is also such an effective method for tackling your stress. Because what happens to a lot of us is that we have something we're stressing about and we can't stop thinking about it, and that continues to build the stress. I actually heard a really nice anecdote that I wanted to share with you because I think it does a really good job of illustrating that. And it was this man, and he was talking about, if I hold a glass of water, here I have a glass of water, it's not very heavy, right? I can hold this for a while and I'm fine. But if I hold it up for an hour, my arm is going to start to hurt, right? And if I keep holding it for the entire day and I don't put it down, my arm is going to feel like it's about to fall off and it's going to be tingly and it's going to be numb. Well, our stress is exactly the same, right? If we have something that we're thinking about and we're stressed, it might be really small if we're able to just deal with it and move on. But if we keep thinking about it for, let's say, an hour, it's going to feel bigger. And if we think about it for a day and 2 days and 3 days, well, it's going to feel like 1,000 pounds. So it's really important to do something about it when it happens so that you're not carrying it with you. And then another effective method is stretching, right? I mean, excuse me. Obviously, I'm going to advocate for that because I'm passionate about yoga, but you don't have to do yoga. I'm talking even putting your hands up like this and leaning to the side or leaning to the other side, because when you're sitting all day, your energy is just stagnant, right? And so something so little as just moving your body, trying to touch your toes, whatever you're able to do, it really makes a big difference in giving you new energy and feeling revitalized. And that can really change your mood pretty instantly. Excuse me. So, we were talking about digestion, and I just wanted to readdress that for a second because it really is all interconnected. So when you're reducing your stress, naturally your digestion is going to improve. And there are certain things that you can consciously do to have a better digestion. So one of those things can be taking a few deep breaths before you eat. Some people, like to say a prayer or, just a moment of gratitude. And what that really does is that it's calming your body down right before you eat, and it's putting you in a really relaxed state. And that helps you digest your food. You can eat the healthiest meal on the planet, but if you're eating it stressed, or you're on the go and you're in your car, which I'm totally guilty of doing before, I would drive to work sometimes and I would have my breakfast in the car and then stop, and sometimes it would fill, and I would have a stomach ache, So really having these activities where you're actively calming yourself down. And actually my husband, who he's been suffering from a few stomach issues, was trying this. He would take 10 deep breaths before he ate, and it made a huge difference in his digestion. So it's not just an idea. And then the other thing too is really starting to pay attention to which foods are bothering your stomach about an hour after you eat, right? It's not immediately after you eat, but about an hour after you eat. If you have a stomach ache, you have diarrhea, you have constipation, you have gas, start to notice what it was that you were eating. And of course, there are foods that are naturally more inflammatory, not for everybody, but for a majority or a lot of people. And I'm sure you've heard of some of them, sugar, gluten, soy, caffeine for some people, dairy. And, you can do your own experimentation with that to determine what is sensitive for you and what isn't. So final thoughts are, obviously there are always going to be stressors in life, and that is just the way life is. And it is especially the way life is for attorneys. But having stressors and feeling stressed doesn't mean you have to be feeling stressed all the time. And there are these coping mechanisms that you can put in place to really help you manage that stress and to even reduce the number of stressors that you have. And this is also a lifelong practice, right? The idea is that you want to do this for the rest of your life, and that you're doing it in a way that feels, when you're being authentic to who you are and you're doing the things you like to do, it feels fun, right? It doesn't feel like a chore. And, the piece on perfectionism that I mentioned, excuse me, all of these weight loss programs and all of these dieting programs that come out around New Year's, they're all playing to that element inside of you, because they're not really helping you make changes. They're just giving you, a 20-day period where they're like, go on some crash diet for 20 days and see results. But if you're not actually changing that underneath the surface level of your belief system of what you can and can't do, what happens? I mean, we all know what happens with those systems is that you usually just end up gaining the weight right back. And it's because you're not really making sustainable changes. So really remember that it's a lifelong practice. And that means that you might have one good week and then another bad week and then another good week. And then, have grace with yourself. And especially during these times, like obviously they have been unprecedented. They have been, with all the other stress we have in our life, it's certainly been a much more stressful time. And have grace with yourself, give yourself permission and do what feels good for you. And, and I hope that will really, really help. So that's all. Thank you so much. And now I'd be happy to take questions. I'm gonna, I guess one of you guys can tell me the questions because I can't see them with the screen share.
If they can unmute. By the way, that was very good, Jessica. Full of enthusiasm and energy. It was an excellent presentation, and that's unique. We really haven't had one like that. So thank you very, very much. But hey, guys, if you'd like, just maybe raise your hand here or speak up, and and you can ask the question if you'd like.
Or you can put it in the chat box if you're, feeling shy.
Yeah, there's one down there. You can see the chats.
I don't think there was a question. It was just a comment.
Yeah. Loved the bit about perfectionism. Makes sense. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Very unique and terrific. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Anything you want to say about the presentation, the material?
Okay.
Well, hey, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I
And I
enjoyed it.
see we have a few chats here.
Yeah, I especially enjoyed
Oh,
your.
sorry. Someone says he has a question, but he needs time to write. Okay, I'll give you the time to write.
Okay.
Was there one particular thing you did to clear up your acne? There wasn't one particular thing. There were a few things, but a few steps that I took was that I did a food sensitivity test. And so I found out all the foods I was sensitive to. And that was actually very enlightening because the foods most to were and bananas. Oh no, sorry, asparagus and bananas, which are not like unhealthy foods, but they were foods that I was eating all the time. So I thought that was very interesting. And so what I did is I cut out all of the foods. There's a chart that shows you sort of most sensitive to least sensitive. And so I cut out all of the most sensitive foods. And then I also took a few different vitamins and supplements. And then I also, as I mentioned, I was suffering from anxiety attacks. And so, getting help with that also, I think really contributed as well.
Hey, I have a question about that, Jessica.
Yeah.
You had mentioned dairy products. Were you drinking any milk, eating cheese during that time?
No, not really, because especially I had been traveling in India and Thailand. A lot of those places, it was coconut milk. It wasn't even regular milk. But no, I wasn't really eating that much dairy.
Okay.
Let's see. Would it be possible to watch a recording later? Yes, definitely. You're welcome. Okay,
well,
so
Josh, that's a question for Lauren. Someone joined late and they're wondering. Oh yeah, when will the recording be available? Lauren, do you have any idea about that?
Always about 2 to 3 weeks following the program.
Okay, great. Okay.
I
Anybody?
think Josh said that he had a question, so I'm going to wait a few minutes to let him type. And in the meantime, I just wanted to say that if you have any questions later, maybe you're watching a recording of this and you have a question, or you're interested in working with me, interested in me coming maybe to your firm or your company to give a talk, please feel free to reach out at jessica@freddysdaughter.com. My law email, which I didn't put in here, is weizenbluthlaw@gmail.com if you're interested in discussing healthcare law. And I would love to hear from you. And I'm just so grateful to have done this. I really enjoyed it.
We enjoyed having you.
Okay, I guess I'll just stop the sharing. Okay, well, I don't see any more. Have you had to change any of what you suggested during COVID? That's a great question. Due to added stress. Well, actually, if you notice, the reason why I was coughing throughout this, I've noticed I actually got COVID over Christmas, and I was fine, very mild, but I have noticed this lingering thing where this is maybe the third talk I've given where my throat gets really dry and I start coughing. I have to admit that I have some really good systems in place because I've been doing this a really long time. And so I feel like I was, the good news is that once you do have these mechanisms and you develop them as a habit, it really helps during these types of stress. During COVID, I was working out at home in the morning, and I had an app that would just give me classes to do. I was meditating every morning. I was doing these things because I knew that they helped me. But, I'm certainly not perfect. And it was a stress, it's been a stressful time. It's not over. And so that's why I really say to give yourself grace, because were there mornings where I slept in instead of, working out? Absolutely. There still are those mornings, Were there days where I ate, chocolate or ice cream because it felt good? Yes. But that's why it's a lifelong an endeavor. And that's why I say to get rid of that perfectionism, because guess what? If you're eating pretty well 5 times a week, it's okay if you have 2 days where you go get an ice cream or you go out for brunch and you don't think about it too much, because that's 80%, right? And I like to generally say, I like to have an 80-20 rule. If 80% of the time you have good habits that you're implementing, you're feeling good, you're exercising, you're doing whatever it is to you that you'd like to do, it's okay to have that 20% fallback, And I think with COVID, use this time, or something I did was, as I mentioned, I used this time to pursue something that was a passion of mine, which is to explore health coaching and get a health coaching certificate. And I would say, during COVID, you might release some of the expectations that you have of yourself to maybe look a certain way or do a certain thing, and instead think about things that you're passionate about that you haven't had the chance to pursue, and see if that's something that you can explore.
Anybody have anything else? Any other questions, comments, thoughts? The answer appears to be no. Jessica, thank you.
Yes, I think so.
Pardon? Anybody have anything else?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it.
Okay. Hey, Jessica, thank you very much. I think we all enjoyed it, and you contributed significantly to our health and wellness program. So thank you very, very much, and wish you the best. And I hope I have contact with you in the future.
Yes, definitely.